Hello, everyone, and welcome back to week 2 of the To Grandmother's House Felt Panel Sew Along. My name is Jennifer Long from Sew a Story, and I am thrilled to have you here. This week, we are talking about and learning how to sew the felt dolls together, ways to use the felt dolls, embellishments. You won't want to miss this episode. So come on in and grab your tea, grab your supplies, and let's get Sew a Story together. Okay, let's get started. So just a little recap. What you need is if you need anything for your supplies and you're not sure exactly what they are, you can watch last week's video on getting prepared. You can head over to the blog, make sure you have signed up for our free sew along, and make sure you've downloaded the felt panel instructions. They are the same for the felt doll as the felt panel, but we add a little bit more for the bag if you really want to take it to the next level. But right now we're doing felt dolls only for week 2, so let's begin. Last week you roughly cut out your felt doll way bigger than was what was around the felt doll. And then you either fused or laid the craft extra firm heavyweight stabilizer behind. If you choose not to use it, that's totally fine. Then you'll just do it without. Now we're going to talk about embellishing. So embellishing is also something that is completely optional, but let me tell you a few things on why I love it. So number one, it allows you and or the children you are working with or for to be creative. So it allows you to kind of pick up on some of the elements that you can see in the design and create them with texture or embellish them in any way that you can feel. So there's no right or wrong way when you're embellishing. It's completely creative. So it's a great way to sort of build fine motor skills. It's a great way to just relax if it's for yourself, and it's a great way to like add a little bit of something special, a little bit of you, and a little bit of love. Reason number 2 I love embellishing is, I'm sure you're with me on this because you love fabric too. Fabric is so tactile. So I don't know if you ever go to a quilt shop and before you buy the fabric, you touch it. It's just like, oh, do I want this fabric? And you touch it and then you feel like, oh yes, I want this fabric. You're not alone. I am with you there. And so are children. And so even more so. So they are going to maybe go deeper in and think more. It's going to hit other senses. So we know that we like explore with our 5 senses, which is sight, hearing, taste. So they might even chew on them, touch and sound. So we can get almost all of those here, and the sound can be us talking. And so on these little cute mushrooms, if you can see, I've made French knots on all of them. And you guys, these feel awesome. So if you are making this for someone, they are going to really enjoy the sensory aspect of this for a child. If you are making it with a child, this is a perfect opportunity to teach them how to make a French knot. So one way that I do this, I always, when I'm embellishing, I want these to like stand out and be big. I use Aurifil floss and I use all 6 strands when I create any of the stitches. So French knots, we have a stitch library if you ever want to like see how to use these stitches, if you want to do like a running stitch or a chain stitch or a daisy stitch or any kind of hand embroidery stitch you want to do. This is still, there's no backing on this yet. This is still on your felt piece, either by itself or felt piece with a stabilizer. If you have that stabilizer connected to it, Again, it's a lot easier for you to manage. It doesn't need to be hooped. I mean, you don't really have to with felt anyways. Felt is so forgiving and so easy to sew into, but it's really lovely to embroider with just that extra little layer too. And you can see on little red here, I just added a couple embellishments on opposing sides of her cape, just to accentuate it and give her some kind of like excitement on both sides. But you can add any kind of texture that you want. On the back, you can see that I did French knots and I dragged that stitch line over and did this here again. And that is completely fine because this is going to get covered up with that next piece of felt. So you're not going to see it on the back. This is why I think that, or I believe that hand embroidery is excellent because it's teaching all of these skills and tactile and everything else, but it's also safe for kids because you're going to bury all of this at the back and they are completely fixed. Make sure you knot it all, and we've got lots of dimension because you've used all 6 strands of the floss. However, if you opt to use a different type of embellishing, let's say you want to use sequins or buttons, that is completely up to you and it would be adorable, there's no doubt. Just make sure that the child that you're giving to is old enough that it won't cause a choking hazard and that you still stitch them on in a way where it's secure in between the sandwich, if that makes sense. But I don't recommend buttons or anything that can get pulled off and choked on if it's a young child. Okay, if you're just using these to embellish, like or you're doing story time at the school with them, then that's like another situation again. So we're going to go through just a couple of ideas and inspiration, and then we're going to talk again just a little bit about those seam allowances and how you can and what you can do with all of those. So I'm just going to show you some examples. I showed you some French knots on the pajamas too. I added French knots. I love French knots. On the wolf, I added some running stitches on his fur in both the tail and his chest. They feel great, you guys. On the woodcutter, I added French knots for his buttons and then just little X cross stitches for his boot laces. On the pie, I did a little teardrop shape embroidery there and then a running stitch up here. The strawberry, I added just a little bit of seeds to the strawberry. On little red here, you can see on her lace, I just echoed the line drawing on there and then filled in this little heart so it had lots of dimension to it. I showed you the mushrooms already, so just wanted to give you some ideas for inspiration. I did a little X on the top corner to make it juicy on the apple, so just a little bit of fun ideas like that. Once you have your doll totally stitched how you want, and that's why I like that bit, I'll just take it with me to the living room and stitch them out. Oh, I meant to show you these two. Look at the darling trees. I did lots of fun little French knots on those too. Okay. Oh, and then I did a little, see, it's just too fun, you guys. Just the little running stitches through all of the leaves on that tree. And look, you can't even see it on the back. Isn't that fantastic? So I put it through those 2 layers. Now I'm taking my 3rd layer, if I'm using that stabilizer inside. It's roughly cut again, and this is just my craft felt on the back. And I'll just make sure that my seam allowance is totally covered and that I'll pin it through so it's like this. Now here you can decide if it's you sewing, if you're a beginner or an advanced. If it's a child sewing, you're going to take this to your sewing machine and using a matching thread color to the seam allowance you pick. So if I am going to do it, let's say I'm going to do it on the inner seam allowance, you're going to actually sew in the center of that seam allowance. So let me show you what that would look like. You can see my seam. It's actually in the center of that seam allowance. Oh, look at the French knots on her little shoes, on her slippers. And then I'm going to cut where that like beige and brown line meet. If I'm going to be using that brown line, then I can stitch right on like the seam between it on the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can decide how you're doing it and then stitch basically halfway in between those where you're going to cut. So you need to decide where you're going to cut first, but don't cut there yet. sew around the whole perimeter on your sewing machine, and then you're going to cut. Now, when you sew around it on your machine, you can do one of two things. You can use a matching thread color to the top and the bottom. So here I would just use like a white thread is fine. Or if you want, you can use like a see-through thread if you want to as well, but just something that doesn't take away from the design. And if you're not exactly perfect, it doesn't matter, because as you can see, I'm not exactly perfect on this doll. And you know, can you even tell? It's so good. So fun. So then we've sewn it together. Once it's sewn all together, then you'll just take your nice small cutting scissors. I don't have mine here. They're all the way over there. But you are just going to cut on the seam allowance that you've chosen. And again, you don't have to do this in your sewing studio. You can be doing that. You need to sew on the machine in your studio. But you can take this back into your bin, do all the pieces, and then cut out your shapes right on there. Once they're cut out, remove the pin if you pinned it, and they are done. That's how easy they are. They are complete and done and ready to play. The great thing about felt, as I've said before, is that with the felt on the back, they actually it's like a felt board, they stick together. So, you know, she can be carrying an apple, or, you know, who wants to carry the apple is the squirrel. And the squirrel is going to carry the apple all the way to the forest, and it's going to leave the apple in the forest. Leave the apple here in the forest, and then go back more. Maybe he's going to go get the pie. Like, just think about all the great language development we can do as we are creating. So maybe you've already sewn these 3 shapes. You can have your children in the sewing space with you, and they can be creating and playing with these already while you are sewing the next ones. So it's this great, intergenerational family building. You're not only teaching them early literacy, you're not only teaching them to be creative, and if they've helped you, all of this, but you're also empowering their creativity. They can see you're making this for them. They will feel the love that you are making this for them. They're going to take greater care of this, and then think about the actual art of making it together. It's like a very great memory and bonding. So you're almost building, you not almost aren't, you are building the memories together that you're hoping to come right there in the process. So it's just so exciting. And there's no right or wrong for felt dolls. You can be as creative as you want with them. And I did little French knots on the bottom of her skirt. And then here again, I added details there. So much fun. Oh, I cannot wait to see what you do with these dolls. I really hope that you share them on social media. Tag me at Sew a Story. It's _ Jennifer Long. And that way I can share them easily when you do that. But come into the Facebook group, share them in the Facebook group. You're welcome to share your links on YouTube if you've been making them and you want to share them. I'm so happy for that. If you're a shop and you're carrying these, please feel welcome to share too. I firmly believe it's sitting a sign right above my door that says "Lift as you rise." I firmly believe we can all grow together and lift up this early years education fabric through this industry. So thank you so much for being here. I love sharing this Sew a Story fairy tale felt panel called To Grandmother's House with you, and I can't wait to see what you will create with it. I will see you here next week to work on the felt bag together. We're going to give you a couple options. Do not be intimidated. If you can do a felt doll, this is easier than the felt doll. The easy sew way is easier than the felt doll. And I'll give you a harder way if you like a challenge. But this way, the way that I have shown right here, it's just as easy as the felt dolls, you guys. So I'll see you here next week. And I hope you have a most lovely week. Bye for now. See you soon.